this morning in Genesis, where we left off last week in the 41st chapter. So last week, we talked about how God moved Joseph forward. Even when it didn't look like Joseph's life was moving forward, God was moving him forward through everything. Joseph progressed from being a favorite son to being thrown into a pit, to being sold into slavery, to being thrown into prison, to being the second in charge of Egypt, only lower than the Pharaoh. God progressed his life. Today we will continue about how God continued to move Joseph's life forward and how he brought completion of Joseph's dreams. So we're going to start in Genesis 41 and we'll start in verse 46, the first part of that scripture, that verse. Genesis 41 and 46. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he began to serve Pharaoh. We are told in Genesis 37 and verse 2 that Joseph was 17 years old. He is 17 years old when he is helping herd the flock, to shepherd the flock with his brothers. He is 17 years old when his brothers decide to throw him in a pit. He is 17 years old when he is sold into slavery. And at 30 years old, he is second in charge of Pharaoh. 13 years Joseph spent in either slavery or prison. 13 years. What would you do if you had been in that position for 13 years? How would you feel about life? How would you have reacted to all those things? I'm not going to ask you to answer that, but I just want you to think about it. 13 years he was either a slave or an inmate, and now he's Egyptian royalty. Now, let's jump back to verse 45 of that same chapter. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priestess of On. So Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. Now in the 7 plentiful years, the ground brought forth abundantly. So he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields which surrounded them. Joseph gathered very much grain as the sand of the sea, until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. So through Joseph's journey, he has been given purpose and responsibility. He's been elevated and exalted. He has married a wife and had 2 sons. Joseph has lived a full life. He had 13 years of slavery. We have 7 years of good times where everything's harvesting like it should, to the point that he can't even count how much food they've collected to put in store. He's had 2 sons born to him. God has prospered him, and he's prospered Egypt because of Joseph. But his dreams that he had that we read about last week have not yet been fulfilled.
That's right.
But I want you to think about, in the middle of that, Joseph's dreams hadn't been fulfilled. But what all the other things that God was doing that was fulfilling Joseph's life? That he was building Joseph into something else. That he was building Joseph up. That he was giving him a purpose and a family. You know, sometimes we look at maybe when we're young, when we first come to know the Lord. And there are things that are in our mind or in our heart of I want to see done with the Lord. I want to be a part of. I want to, all these things that happen. And we don't see those things come to pass immediately. And we don't just forget about them, we kind of get bitter about it, we kind of get disillusioned about it. And we miss out sometimes on the very simple goodness of God that comes to our lives because of those things. Because we have set up something in our mind that has to happen, or else we're not fulfilled. And at the same time, God is instilling in us and giving to us the greatness of life. He has given to Joseph purpose, a life, a family, sons. Sons that he names and says, basically says, you know what, I've been through all that, but God has brought me out of it. He's made me forget all the bad things that happened because of the life I have now. So many times we'll hold on to our disappointment and miss out on the goodness of life that God provides for us. Because there's so much that we set up. We are such a people in this country that we want always to look at the spectacular. We always want to look at the thing that is the showiest, the flashiest, the things that look big that other people can see. The greatness of life sometimes in God is in the very simplicity of having a purpose and having a family. How much we have stolen that from people in this country. Because we have told them, no, you shouldn't be focused on family. You shouldn't be focused on these things, on your children and all that. So we've given direction, or actually not given direction, we've taken away direction from us. We've taken away the simple joys of life by focusing on the big, the spectacular. There is so much good in our simplicity of having a job, going to work, having people who love us, family that loves us, having children, and all the things that go along with that. There's beauty in those things. Yes. And God prospers us along the way if we will keep moving with him. But we also can grow bitter in that. Now, we're going to talk about Joseph a little more than that, but I wonder sometimes with Joseph, did he forget his dream? And I don't mean forgot in the sense that he didn't remember that it happened, didn't remember that he had dreamed it, but forgot in the sense that the dreams just didn't seem so important to him. Or maybe even that he, in his mind, he thought, maybe I missed something. But Joseph is able to find contentment with God where he's at, doing what has been put in front of him. Whether he really understands it or not, God has put him in the exact place that he was meant to be. We miss out on understanding that we are in the exact place that God has put us in when we push so hard looking for the big and the spectacular. I would love for this house to be full. I would love for revival to break in. But at the same time, there is a simplicity of the Holy Spirit in the interactions that you and I have, the relationships we build in this community and in this house, yes, that I wouldn't trade for anything else. Amen. We can't look so much at the big all the time. Sometimes we got to let that thing sit until its time has come. And be content and happy and understand in the Lord that he is working something in us at the same time. Chapter 42. Starting in verse 1. When Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another? Jacob was basically saying, why y'all just standing here? Get to work. Verse 2, and he said, indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us, that we may live and not die. So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, lest some calamity befall him. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. And then he said to them, where do you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them. Let's stop right there. So as the famine is going strong in all the land there, Jacob hears grain is for sale. He sends his sons, minus Benjamin. And Joseph comes face to face with his brothers, though they don't know it. At this point, over 20 years have passed since his brothers threw him in that pit. 20 years. Over 20 years. His brothers aren't thinking anything about seeing Joseph. Joseph has no idea in his mind that he's going to see his brothers. And here they show up. Now, can you imagine the emotion of Joseph? Can you sit in his place a second and go, these are my brothers. I haven't seen my brothers since I was a teenager. And then he goes, these are my brothers. These are the guys who threw me in a pit, who plotted to kill me. These are my brothers, the ones who let me get sold into slavery. And Joseph has them in his hand to do whatever he wants to do with them. What are you doing in that situation? We can look at Joseph spoke roughly to them. I don't blame him in certain ways. I'm sure Joseph's emotion at that point, and when he recognized that they didn't recognize him, he knew. He knew. In the middle of conversing with his brothers, Joseph remembers the dream. Can you imagine that thought? That in the middle of his brothers bowing down to him, suddenly that dream comes back to the front of his mind that he had of his brothers bowing down to him. And he goes, God has fulfilled my dream. What would that be like? The excitement that would overcome the mind-blowing of, I don't know about you, sometimes I see things like when something happens, it's like I see the connections of how it started here and it winds up here. Yes. All of a sudden in Joseph's mind, everything is falling in place of how it came to be that his dream was fulfilled. That it had to be the pit, that it had to be this, that it had to be that, to get him to that point that his brothers are now bowing down before him, that he has power over them, but he has power to save them too. We aren't explicitly told this, but based on the way Joseph speaks to his brothers and the test he puts them through the next few chapters, Joseph has not forgotten the mistreatment that his brothers put him through. He hadn't forgotten. I also think that Joseph was examining his brothers. He wanted to see if his brothers had changed or matured in the intervening years from the time they threw him in a pit to now that they're bowing down before him. He wants to know something about them that he can learn by them not understanding who he is. He wants to know who they are. Now, we're not going to read through the whole rest of these passages, that everything Joseph does. We can kind of summarize. he tells them, I'm going to sell your grain, but you got to leave one of your brothers here. Reuben, the oldest, who tried to protect Joseph, he basically gives them a I told you so moment. They go back, or start to go back, and they find all their money put back into the sacks with them. They're afraid to do any more trade in Egypt. They have broken their father's heart because now they have caused him not to lose one, but two sons. Joseph tells them, hey, you can come back for more grain, but you got to bring your youngest brother with you when you come. That was Joseph's full brother from the same mother. So now they are afraid to do anything. Jacob says, you're not going back with Benjamin. He's just, you're not. So it comes to the point they're running out of food again. They got to go back. Jacob says, listen, go back. You take twice the money. You take what you brought with you back. You take more money. We'll buy food. We'll smooth this thing out. He said, but I'm still not going to send Benjamin. Judah has to step up and say, listen, I'll take responsibility. I'll take responsibility. So they go down, buy grain, think everything's going to be fine. And they start to leave. Well, Joseph sends somebody to examine them, and they have planted on Benjamin Joseph's own silver cup. And he tells them, you're thieves. I'm going to keep him. Now here's to me, as we get into chapter 44, Joseph has tested his brothers. He's about to force Benjamin to stay in Egypt. This is where we see evidence of a change in his brothers. Yes. Judah steps up and he recounts the whole story. And he intercedes on the behalf of Benjamin. He says to Joseph, listen, it will kill my father if Benjamin has to stay. Let me take his place. Let me take his place. Judah was the same one who came up with the idea of I'm going to sell Joseph. I'm not going to kill him, we're going to sell him. And in the 20 plus years since, something changed in Judah's life. Yes. And instead he's saying, let me be the sacrifice and let Benjamin go home. Do we know, would we like to know who was descended from Judah? Do we know? Yes. Jesus comes from the line of Judah. Jesus, our intercessor, comes from that line. We can read about Judah in a lot of places. Judah did a lot of dumb things. But in this moment, he became an intercessor for his own brother. Now, chapter 45. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, make everyone go out from me. So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Does my father still live? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. Now, I want you to think about that a second, that his brothers now are having this revelation. They never expected to see Joseph again in life. They didn't know. They probably figured in the last 20 years, he died somewhere in slavery. Or he got sold off so far we'll never see. So they don't even know how to react to this man who is the second in charge of Egypt, is crying in their presence and is saying, I'm your dead brother, or the brother you thought was dead or thought was gone. I'm Joseph. That's quite the revelation. Verse 4, and Joseph said to his brothers, please come near to me. So they came near. Then he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now they had not told Joseph that they had sold him. So the only person who could know that would be Joseph. They told, when Joseph inquired of them about their family, he said, we were 12, one's at home with dad, and one's not with us anymore. Only Joseph can know this. Verse 5, but now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years a famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he's made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. So Joseph finally breaks. I think it's that cry of Judah's heart that he is interceding for Benjamin that is what breaks Joseph. Because there was a part, I think, that Joseph is still holding back up to that point. Judah's intercession for this brother has broken any bitterness or offense that Joseph still had. Now Joseph's life has come full circle. All the struggle of years has paid off for Joseph to save his family and save much of the world of that day from great distress. Joseph not only has what he had gained from God in Egypt, he not only has his family, his wife, his sons, but he's also been reunited with his natural family in a way that could not possibly have been forecast by anybody when they threw him in that pit. Is that he has his family in fullness finally together. Or they will be once they go get their father. The hurts and pains of yesterday are covered by God's plan. When we go through the difficulties of life, while we're in the middle of them, sometimes it's very hard for us to contextualize what has happened. But when we see God's plan fulfilled in our lives through all the struggle, it makes it all worth it. At this point in Joseph's life, everything that he went through, he would have said, it's been worth it. It's been worth it to have this happen, to have God's plan fulfilled. The full picture has finally been painted from where those dreams were. Joseph can finally fully move forward because he has a heart of forgiveness for his brothers. I'm telling you, there had to be something that always nagged in the back of his mind. What did I do wrong? What did I do that made my brothers treat me that way? What did I do that they made them think they wanted to kill me and then sell me into slavery? But then when we get here, he sees the full picture of God's plan. He goes, you know what? They intended it for a harm. They intended it to get rid of me. But God intended it to save us all. It is impossible for us to fully move forward in God when we hold any offense or bitterness. It never tells us that Joseph was bitter about his brothers. Not explicitly. Not in those words. But we look at this and you know, you think about it. You see, you're reunited with your family for the first time in over 20 years. They don't understand it's you. You think about Joseph, he probably dressed in the finery of Egypt. He looks like an Egyptian. He spent all this time there. He probably acts more like an Egyptian than he does one of them. They don't recognize him, but Joseph doesn't tell them who he is. If he didn't hold something against them, wouldn't he have told them who he was from the beginning? I think he would have. I think he would have ran to him, you know, but there was still probably some wariness of, hey, these are the same guys who threw me in a pit. But bitterness is a trap. Bitterness keeps us in bondage to a place or to a time or to a people. When we become bitter in soul, we are trapped in one moment or one time or what something did to us or said to us, and we never move past it because we're stuck right there in that spot. In certain ways, Joseph was still stuck in that pit until he could be reunited with his brother, till he could have that reclaimed. Although everything worked out, up until that moment, there had to be something that said, why did this happen? And God works it out and he answers it. And he heals it in the same moment. He heals all those things. Joseph could have been chosen to be hard to his brothers. He could have revealed himself immediately and put them in hard slavery or in prison. Now, let me ask you, would you think that was justified? I would. In myself. But if Joseph had done those things, if he'd thrown them in prison, if he'd made them be slaves in Egypt, he would have violated his very way of life. That wasn't who God had called him to be. That wasn't how he had ever lived. He would not have been honoring God and mistreating his brothers. He would have been honoring himself if he mistreated his brothers. And in fact, in a way, harming himself at the same time. There would not have been this joyful reunification of the family that we get from Scripture. When we find ourselves in bitterness, we often want a get back. We want to inflict upon others what we had inflicted on us. That's not God's plan for us. We don't necessarily forget things that have been done to us or the hard things of life. But we must remember God is working through these things. This morning, I don't minimize the magnitude of difficult life experiences. There are many things in life that affect us greatly and are hard to move on from. What I'm trying to impart today is the immensity of God's ability to move us forward through our difficulties. We face hard things. Some people face things that are much harder than what other people face. There are friends of mine who have been through things that I don't know how I would get through it. I don't know how I'd keep walking, how I'd react to it. But I also see those friends move past it. And they might not move perfectly through it, but they do move through it with God. But I don't say those things that we can always move forward to say that what we go through is not hard, it's not difficult, that it doesn't affect our hearts, it doesn't break our hearts. But I say that to let us know that God is able, no matter what our situation has been, to move us past those things, to move us forward in life, to grow us closer to Him, to grow us as His servant in this world, to grow us past the bitterness that might build up. Because it's easy to stay there. Y'all, maybe not y'all, there are times in life I have been bitter and angry and have no idea why. But just have it be there. And have to bring it to God and say, God, I don't know why this is here. I need your help to get past it. And that's with not really anything bad happening. But when bad things happen, it's hard to get past them. It's hard not to grow in bitterness, to live in bitterness. God delivers us and moves us forward. Not just moving us past the hard times, but moving us past that hardness of emotion and bitterness that lives in it. Romans 8:28 tells us, and we know all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose. The first step in us moving forward in anything is to trust God, to be in a relationship with Him. It is not possible to truly move forward without God. It's not. You just walk around in circles. You don't get anywhere. With God's help, we must let go of any bitterness and offense that we carry from the events of life. This is not easy. If we have been mistreated, our inclination is to get even and to retaliate. But revenge doesn't satisfy. We read here, and I didn't want to continue on in the rest of that passage. But when Pharaoh finds out that Joseph is reunited with his brothers, he says, bring your father, bring your family, bring the women, bring all your stuff. You will have a home here in this land. Eventually those things come to be a problem. But for his family, for his family, the things Joseph had to endure wound up benefiting them and making them great and protecting them for many, many generations. We don't know what the end result of everything that happens in our life. We can't see the full picture. But we can know that God is using the difficulties to build something in us, to move us forward, to be something beyond what we've been. Can we, in the middle of those things, recognize, like I said earlier, the simple things that God is doing, the simple joy of life that he helps provide for us when we're in step with him? Can we wait on the dreams or the visions we've had in God's timing? Not mine, but in his. Or do we grow bitter because things aren't happening like we think they should, or we've been mistreated, or they're not happening in our timing? That's what I'm asking. Are you bitter about life? Are you bitter because of what you faced? Let God help you move through it. Let God help you. Let him show you the simple things that he provides every day that we miss out on so many times because we're looking so much for the big thing to happen. Let him show you that. We miss, I think, miracles continually because the miracle we're looking for is not the one God provided. Are you bitter? Are you caught up in what something's done to you? God can move that out of your way. Let's pray together.